Well, greetings and felicitations, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show, where for 3 minutes at the top of the hour, we talk about absolutely nothing important at all. Just me testing everything, making sure everything is set up right. Sound's on, mics on, cameras on, and make sure the microphone is running through the right channel. I'm going to do that right now, and yes, it is. The audio codec. Boom.
What you doing?
Same thing I do this time of night, almost every night.
Krampus comes on the 5th. It's
Yes.
past the 5th.
5th of December or January?
5th of December.
Oh.
Because he turns kids into elves before...
What?
He has to turn his kids into elves before Christmas.
He turns them into elves.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we'll learn some of that tonight, huh? So we're going to talk about Krampus in about 2 minutes. We got about 1 minute and 45 seconds. We go live over on the radio station. That is Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio.com. If you want to hear just the audio version of this show, or you can be right here in the YouTube chat room. What?
Is there any kids watching this radio?
I don't know. Any kids out there? Probably not. Not like you. There's might be some watching in the background. I don't think any 9-year-old tunes this show in on a regular basis. So, Field Guy says, Ellery, your dad is Santa. I have the proof. Shush, Field Guy.
He already told me.
She's not supposed to know that.
You already told me.
Good evening, brother. And Josh Kemp, happy belated birthday. Field Guy, do Toys R Us kids count? We have 40 seconds. We go live. A little less than 40 seconds. Sean's kids are in bed already. Where you should be. All right, you got to go.
Mom's not done pooping yet, so no.
You don't have to share that on the radio. You really don't.
She was
Okay, time to go
pooping.
because I got to start the show. See ya. All right, guys, we got 9 seconds going dark. Stand by.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, hey there, hi there, ho there, everyone. You're as welcome as could be. We have a Disney World house around here this week because of last week and all the kids going with their older sisters down to Disney World. It's starting to wear off, though. And school is school, and so they're back at it. And we've got just a few days until Christmas. So we're everybody getting ready. You feeling ready? I'm Scotty Roberts, by the way. This is my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network, the Subspace Odyssey Network. That throws me a little bit because we're officially the Subspace Odyssey Radio Network, as you see in the graphic there on the screen down in the right-hand corner. And yet the website is just odysseyrradio.com. ODYSY radio.com, where you can go hear the show in its audio format, and you can see the whole lineup over there of all the other shows running on Odyssey Radio. And you can also come back over here to the YouTube channel. If you're just listening, you want to join the chat room, the YouTube channel is the best place to do it. Now, you can also go over to watch the video broadcast of this show over on my Patreon channel. There's just no channel there for chatting. And so the only chatting you can do over there is just in the comments section. So we stick pretty much over here for a chat room, and it's the best place to be. So come on in. I know there's a lot of people out there that are watching that aren't in the chat room. Why don't you come on over, check it out, see who all is here, meet the other Intrepids, and such as Barbie D is here, and Field Guy is here, and Randall Flagg. We got Steph Cuervo Queen and Barbara D. Barbie D, I think I mentioned you already. You got two mentions now. Elder Barry is here. And Sean Stroik. Good to see you, Sean. Glad to have you here tonight. And Anita Palmer's here, and Claudette I got to ask you to say it, Malaspina. So I think it's pronounced. That's what it says. Anyway, Michael is here, Viking Off-Roading. And Josh Kemp, Randall Flagg, late belated birthday, Josh Kemp. Good to have you in here tonight. And just looking to see if I've missed anybody who might be in here. I think Joseph is here. He was at least way at the beginning before the show even started. So everybody that's here, welcome. Those of you who will keep filing in, welcome to you. We're going to get this rolling here pretty quick. Now, we all know, of course, what legends and myths are and how they affect us and how we use them. We all would tell our kids, of course, stories of, don't get up at night. You got to go to bed at night. The boogeyman will get you. Something as simple and old as that. You can also find that kids are tempted to go to bed and do good and so on. And it speeds up toward the end of the year because, well, Christmas is coming. And Santa Claus knows everything. He knows if you've been naughty. He knows if you've been nice. And he's going to take care of you accordingly. And you'll either get gifts or you'll get a bag of coal or a piece of coal, which I would think in the days that legend started would have been pretty valuable. You don't get a toy, but you get a piece of coal. That's how you heated your house. I would think that would be a valuable thing. So we all have heard all these tales. We've grown up with stuff. Maybe not all parents do that. Not all parents say, hey, if you go outside, there's werewolves outside, or there's reptilians in the trees in the backyard, and they will get you if you get out of line. And so Krampus, I think, the thing about Krampus, while there's a lot of information on Krampus, there's a lot of simple information, a lot of non-information. Because Krampus, I hate to break it to you folks, hope you're wearing your iron shorts, Krampus is just a story. I have never bumped into Krampus. I've never seen hoof prints in my living room, although there should be. If he was real, I think we would have seen hoof prints a long, long, long time ago. And so, Professor Bauer, how you doing? Welcome. And Sarah Yusuf, welcome. Yeah, the Wendigo. Is the Wendigo a Krampus, though? Is Krampus a Wendigo? The Wendigo is something very different. We did talk about Wendigo on this show a ways back. What was this? Field Guy says the article I read said all the companies, but not 100%. You're talking about something else, I think. So all of that to say, Krampus is something we're going to talk about tonight. We'll mix in a couple of other legends and myths and things like that, and creepy stories. One in particular, if you don't know anything about, do you know, and it was brought to my attention by Daniel C. Craig, and did you know about Frau Perchta? Perchta, Frau Perchta. I'll give you a little bit of information just to wet the whistle and as a bit of a teaser. So this January 6th, instead of bemoaning the fact that Christmas is over, why not celebrate Perchtentag? Perchtentag. There you go. That's German for you. Too many consonants all strung together. Perchtentag. You tell your kids they'd better clean up their rooms or Frau Perchta will come and disembowel them in the night. Kids love that sort of thing, So there's a little teaser as to what Frau Perkta is all about. And I have to be honest, I've said to my kids, I've held out the threat, and I've said things like, if you don't get your room picked up, you're going to be grounded from your phone, or you're not going to be able to go to that thing or do that stuff. I've used those threats. I don't think I've ever threatened to disembowel my children. You clean your room, or Dad's going to come in the middle of the night and disembowel you. So is that a cramp in your snatch, or are you just happy to see me? Very nice, Professor Bauer. I didn't know that's where that was going. I wouldn't have read that out loud so quickly if I knew there was such naughty language attached to it. Bananas help. Randall Flagg gets me when I'm sleeping and knows you when you're awake. Let's see. I thought Discovery. Oh, okay. You're all talking about other things. A desperate housefrau, says Sarah Yusuf. Is that like a new reality show? Desperate Housefraus of Ancient Germany. I always talk like that. Whenever I get a German accent in my mind, I always think of when the first Paradigm Symposium back in 2012, 11 years ago, we had the first American appearance of Eric von Däniken, author of Chariots of the Gods, and on the show Ancient Aliens, his first American appearance in 12 years. And so he came out, and I was dealing, after we struck a deal, Micah Hanks and I were running the show back then, and in that first year, and Mike and I were talking with him on the phone, and he's got he lives in Geneva, Switzerland, but what do they speak over there? Because it's not all German, but it's all Germanic, because they all sound alike to me. But Eric von Däniken, he was saying, yes, after the show, you should come and visit me, and we'll sit here on my veranda and we'll smoke pipes and look at the Alps. And then he turned me over to his assistant, young Ramon, who took care of all the business matters. And Ramon, we always had a little fun with Ramon after that show, because we talked to, when Ramon would come on the phone, he'd say, hello, this is Ramon. I'm here to talk for Mr. von Däniken. And he was the first one to tell me that, now there's one thing you must remember. Mr. von Däniken does not exist in the mornings. He says, you will not call him before noon or 2 p.m. because he does not exist in the mornings. And he always talks like this. This is Ramon. I'm wondering if we have champagne for our room. Yeah, we can get you some champagne for your room. And so on and so on and so on. So I remember when we handed him his check at the end of the show. That was our first show, and it was big. And it was really well attended, and we did very well with that show. And we held it at the Doubletree in western suburb of Minneapolis. And we had everybody staying there. We had the restaurants were all there. The bar was there, and public meeting place out in the lobby, in the big foyer. Not even a foyer. They had the swimming pool and all that. So everybody stuck around. And I remember when we handed Ramon Eric's check, and he actually did something like this. I'm going to see if I can imitate him. He went, thank you, thank you. And he says, frankly, we did not believe that you were going to be able to make it, but we thank you for this. I'm going to go tell Mr. von Däniken right now. And so it was, there you go. And of course, when I say thank you, that's not how he said it. That brings back Terry Garr to my memories from Young Frankenstein. Oh, thank you, Dr. Frankenstein. All right, there we go. All right, moving on. Let's get on with it here. What about Krampus? It's a great tale. I don't think there's any fear of thinking that it's real. But then again, as Sarah reminded us, some people might say that about the skinwalkers. And yet, I think the jury is still out on that. I haven't seen one. There are people that will go, phooey, that's all a big Indian folktale. Or is it? So I think Krampus is about as real as Santa Claus is real, because he's supposed to be this kind of evil, dark counterpart to Frankenstein. Let's get to just the basics of him and what he's all about. And I've got Ancient Origins is a great website, and I've got some good information up from them here. And Krampus was the terrifying Christmas devil who punished naughty children. I need to have Wendy here to say naughty for me. I need a naughty surrogate. So in European folklore, Krampus is the antithesis of Santa Claus. He's, or as Jack Skellington will say, Jack Skellington would say, Sandy Claus. And he's the opposite. He's the counterpart. He's the equivalent of a Christmas devil. And Krampus is this horrific beast that hunted down misbehaving children and whipped or terrified them into submission. Man, we need a Krampus, though, don't we? You start reading this, you start finding out more about Krampus. You go, why don't we have one of those? And originally, an ancient pagan tradition, Krampus was coopted into the story, or co-opted, if you will, into the story of St. Nicholas. And since then, he's been rallied against by medieval clergymen, repressed by nationalists, only be revived in an era of mass consumerism. Wow. That's what I get for drinking something carbonated prior to the show. I'm going to go through the whole show going, boop. And enlarge, Scotty says, Steph. Why, Steph, thank you very much for that. I think I will. Boom. There we are. I am now enlarged. Look, that's all it took. Just a word from Steph and I'm enlarged. And let's get back at it, though. Jason, good to see you. I saw that you snuck in. So, so he was his counterpart to St. Nicholas. He was part of the St. Nicholas story. And since then, even though he's been rallied against, he's found this new consumerism, this new, it's cool to like Krampus. And today's practitioners are worried about how the influx of refugees will respond to terrifying Christmas devils. So, and by the way, I've got to mention this. My daughter, Rowan, who is 12, a few weeks ago, she went to sleep in the bedroom upstairs with her sister. So why are you sleeping in here? She talked Rainey into going and sleeping with them. Well, she was afraid. Oh, and I came upstairs in the middle of the night looking, where's Rainey? She's up there. She's with the kids. And Rowan just says to me in the middle of the night, she says, just don't turn off the living room light. Well, why not? I said, I always turn off the living room light. Now, you guys leave them on all the time. Don't turn it off. I'll tell you later. Okay. Well, it turns out she was actually quite afraid that Krampus would show up at our house. I said the next morning when she told me that, I said, you do know Krampus is just a story. I said, do you believe in Santa? No. I said, but you believe in Krampus? Yes. So maybe it's a guilty conscience. I don't know. Something like that. My child was afraid Krampus was going to come for her. So swing, says Professor Bauer. Yep, there it is. See, we're guys. You can count on us that way. And you didn't even touch me. That's like magic. It's a kind of magic. What movie is that a line from? It's a kind of magic. I'm trying to get the accent right. It's a kind of magic. Who said that? And in what movie? So let's go back to it. Krampus was the Christmas devil. He was the son of the Norse goddess Hel, Hel. And the Krampus tradition, it's popular in countries such as Germany, Austria, Hungary, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic. And the name derives from the German word Krampen, meaning claw. There, do you like that? You see how I've dramatized my show now? If you're watching and you're just seeing this, you think it's a boring video simulcast. All I have to do is go claw. Now it's become an exciting simulcast, reeking with excitement. So anyway, it means claw. And according to Jennifer Billock in the Smithsonian Magazine, Krampus had a mangled, deranged face with bloodshot eyes atop a furry black body. Giant horns grew and curled up from his head, displaying his half-goat, half-demon lineage. And legend has it that Krampus was the son of the Norse goddess Hel, the ruler of Helheim, the Norse realm of the dead, and the youngest daughter of Loki. In Encyclopedia Mythica, Hel is described as a horrible hag, half alive, half dead, with a gloomy and grim expression. Her face and body are those of a living woman, but her thighs and legs are those of a corpse, mottled and moldering. I've known women like that. Anyway, moving on. In essence, Krampus is a counterpart to the Christmas devils, such as France's Hans Trapp and the Netherlands' Zwarte Piet, or Black Peter. And the pagan tradition involved people, mostly young men, dressing up to scare away winter's ghosts, usually fearful that mountain spirits that like to come down and wreak havoc would show up. So wearing fur suits, carved masks, they paraded through the villages yelling, ringing bells, and generally making a racket. The custom was oftentimes carried out on the longest night of the year, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, but the longest night. And so, along with other pagan traditions, Krampus became entwined with Christmas as Christianity spread all throughout Eastern Europe. And what Krampus, one of his tasks was to devour naughty children. Now, the big question is, how naughty did you have to be in order to qualify as a Krampus target? And how many kids actually disappeared in these ancient times at Christmas time? Was that a way that certain... Yes, Josh Kemp, you got it, Highlander. It's Connor McLeod of the Clan McLeod. And so about 1,500 years ago, Krampus became the counterpart of St. Nicholas. You realize it was that long ago? 15 centuries ago, Krampus became the counterpart of St. Nicholas. On the night of December 5th and 6th, St. Nicholas was and is said to walk about, leaving little presents in the shoes and boots of well-behaved children. Local folk legends claim that following close behind was Krampus, who set about leaving a rod in the shoes of children who'd been naughty. Now, what a rod was exactly, I don't know. It was an iron bar. And Krampus was even said to carry a bundle of birch sticks with which to strike the bad children. It was probably a spanking rod or something like that. So the worst offenders in children were stuffed into a bag, and they were dragged off to Krampus's lair, where they would presumably be eaten. And together, the Krampus-like figures and the bishop, St. Nicholas, held a kind of judgment day for children. And in National Geographic, Betty Little wrote about this tradition. And Krampus is not so easy to banish. By the 12th century, the Catholic Church began its work to stamp out this pagan devil. Christians were fairly successful at banishing the Krampus until he reemerged in a 19th century fit of consumerism. Manufacturers started to commercialize Krampus after 1890. when the Austrian government relinquished control over the nation's postcard production, causing the industry to flourish. And this is what historian Little had to say. Did you know that the Krampus really got his resurgence to boost the postcard production industry? That's interesting. And there were scary Krampuses for the backstory is more real than the real story, by the way. So there were scary Krampuses for children, silly Krampuses for adults, and this coincided with the revival of Krampus festivals. And although ostensibly supposed to scare children into good behavior, the night allowed adults, mostly men, to dress up in scary costumes and run around the town, usually drunk. So while it was to scare kids into behaving, it was a time for men to misbehave. I aim to misbehave. And so name that. Where'd that come from? I aim to misbehave. So I'm all full of these pop cultural references tonight. What's with that? So see role playing, said Steph. I don't know if you're talking about the same thing. Same as St. Nicholas, says Josh Kemp. Where's Audrey? This is her thing, said Sean. Audrey every now and then. Right, Jason. Firefly. I aim to misbehave. Shiny. So it's the Krampus Lauf or Krampus Run aspect of Krampusnacht to Krampusnight that is the most popular nowadays. But the early 20th century Krampus Lauf, how do you say that in German, was outlawed by the conservative and nationalist parties of Germany and Austria in the 1930s. That would be Hitler did not like Krampus. So the rise of Krampus as the Christmas devil, today Krampus is making this wild comeback in Europe. If you go onto YouTube or TikTok or some of these other places and just look it up, you're going to see these Krampus festivals where everybody's dressed up and they go around town ringing bells and shaking chains and in these costumes. And so this is all thanks partly to a bah humbug attitude in pop culture, with people searching for ways to celebrate the Yuletide season in non-traditional ways. You know, Wendy and I were talking about this on yesterday, on Robertson. How this Lawson Nile was there saying a lot about this, how we've just kind of lost our way, and it seems people to become more cynical. We've turned off Christmas. We've turned off our need for these things for some reason. Is it because it never was important and we had made it important? Or is it because we've lost the importance of it? We can say in rampant consumerism or whatever it might be, but people are turning to these things the same way people are turning to paganism all by itself. Not that paganism hasn't always been there and wasn't here before Christianity, but you're finding that there are a lot of Christians that have grown weary of the things they find in Christianity that they just don't think are so. And they're looking for something else. Does that mean that there is something else? Does that mean that the thing you believe isn't real? No, none of that is so. Then again, none of it may be so. Maybe we are all just adrift out here in the universe, looking for a reason to believe something, to create something to believe. Krampus was something that was created to believe. Now, the nature of Krampus and the nature of human evolution, if you will, such as it is in a couple hundred years, we've grown out of the needs to believe in monsters like Krampus. I think there's too many things about him where the skinwalkers, we still have a modicum, a shred of possibility that still exists in our minds that could exist. But that's because he's not linked to holidays. He's not linked to taking children on a mass scale on Christmas night or around Christmas time. There are elements of the Krampus story that make it a non-believable story. Maybe at one time, localized, it was a great local story that seemed to make a lot of sense. But nowadays it doesn't anymore. There's no way for Krampus to really be out there. So the church hasn't been helping itself, said Randall Flagg. Darn tootin' there, Randall Flagg. Ain't that the truth? Josh Kemp says people have lost faith in the church. That's very true. I think people have lost as much faith in the church as they've lost in our leaders and in our governments. How many people here in this chat room trust the government? Probably not many of you. You can show a raise of hands if you want over there in the chat room. But how many of us then in turn trust that what your priest or your pastor or your imam or your bishop has to say? We might believe these things because we have a belief in it. We have a belief. But do we believe them anymore? Really believe them on a practical level? Like I've said, when I was a youth pastor, I used to tell the kids in my youth group, we did a series once just based on one question. There were kids talking, and I said, let me ask you a question, guys. I said, why are you a Christian? And this was on a midweek service, like a Wednesday night service. And we had the kids would break out, the youth would break out for their own group meeting. And so I had the junior high and the high school, middle school and high school kids. And I asked them, I said, why are you a Christian? Why are you here? And some kids would, of course, well, because my mom and dad make me come. I said, well, okay, that's a given. What if they didn't make you come? Would you come here if the choice was yours? Why are you a Christian? Well, because I grew up in this church. That's where I said to them, you can stand in a garage as long as you want. You'll never turn into a car. We could take that into transitional genderism, transgenderism, but we won't go there tonight. You can wish all you want that you were something that you aren't. That doesn't change you. You can, you can stand in a garage. You could hang a tire on each arm, and you could drink motor oil. It's not going to turn you into a car. So, back to the kids in the youth group, which will take me back to Krampus. I would ask them, why do you believe what you believe? And it ended up being a multiple week series that I did with the kids in talking to them about, why do you believe what you believe? Do you choose it? Will you choose it? Do you think you'll choose it when you're out of your mom and dad's house? And so this is the thing, is that we just don't believe things anymore. JP says, I trust certain sectors of the government. Well, yeah, I do too. Certain sectors. I could trust certain individuals, but the government as a whole, no. Faith is gone in that. Josh Kemp says, depends on what parish, or if I will say an independent Baptist church is better than anything I've been to in years. They don't answer to anyone. Yeah, I tend to shun the Baptist church. That's where I got most of my training and where I grew up most of my life. So, from the time I was 11 and onward. But Krampus's rise in America has mirrored a rise in the number of people who bemoan that tradition has become too commercialized. They're especially distraught about the 2015 comedy horror film centered on the Christmas devil. There's a quote from it here. The Krampus is the yin to St. Nick's yang, said Jeremy Seegers, organizer of a Krampus festival in Orlando, Florida, when speaking to Smithsonian Magazine. That's not from the movie. You have to have the saint. If you have the saint, you have the devil. It taps into a subconscious macabre, or you can say macabre if you wish. Are you French? Macabre? To the macabre desire that a lot of people have, that is the opposite of the saccharine Christmas a lot of us grew up with. And attempts to stop Krampus scaring refugees has taken place. More worrying than Hollywood attempts to capitalize on the tradition, a new wrinkle in the Krampus story has recently arisen concerning the influx of refugees in America. Though the festival is well loved, it gave rise to concerns that new neighbors might be scared of the tradition and its nightmare-fueling costumes. Some called for the annual Krampus festival to be canceled. One city in Austria instead chose to introduce the newcomers to their tradition by inviting children to a display of Krampus costumes and props before the big night. I think it's a wonderful thing that they want to get the refugees used to this sort of thing, said Sagers. You can't force people to adopt cultural traditions of which they have no basis or point of reference. I get that. It makes sense. But speaking with a reporter from the Telegraph, two local participants offered similar views. For people who have never seen it, it can be somewhat intimidating, said Bettina Huber, a local volunteer working on the project. They had no idea about this tradition. They were totally surprised. And it's good that they see what happens, said Paulo Kellini, an Arab translator from Egypt. So the tradition of Krampus has started in countries, or carried on. It's been picked up in a new way. And they even have refugees that they are concerned about introducing them to some of these stories. And I'm looking at the time. We've got about 20 minutes left of the show. So we got time to do a couple of things here. I don't want to get into Perkta yet, Frau Perkta. But let's look at what is Krampusnacht? The origins of the dark German tradition, how it's celebrated. And while Christmas is a time of festivity and joy, Krampusnacht is this dark alternative to St. Nicholas Day. And Krampusnacht is a centuries-old tradition. It's celebrated in Germany and Alpine regions, and including Austria, Bavaria, Hungary, Slovenia, the Czech Republic. We kind of covered that earlier. However, in recent years, the creepy legend has infiltrated British and American popular culture. I think that's interesting, that it's spilled over into our British, or our Western, if you will, cultures. And Krampusnacht is, while Christmas season is a time of festivity and joy, Krampusnacht is this darker tradition that originated as a counterpart to the feast that's dedicated to Saint Nick. Good old Saint Nick. Ho, 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 ho. Anyway, so when is Krampusnacht? It's celebrated annually on December 5th. So it's already gone by us a couple of weeks ago. And this is the night before the feast of St. Nick, and the patron saint of children, sailors, and various groups. So what exactly is Krampus? We give a little description of him, a brief description, but he's an anthropomorphic, which means being thought of as having human form or attributes. He's a figure with claws, horns, a long tongue, a really long tongue. You could lick his kneecaps standing up. He's depicted as a goat-like monster who punishes children for misbehaving in the run-up to Christmas, usually by swatting them and carrying them away in his sack, wrapping them in chains. He's got a basket on a harness on his back where he carries bad children. There's an old Christmas card from a century ago that shows this. Krampus carrying off children crying in the basket. And so what are the origins of... I used to have a picture of that up, and I wish I did now. That's what it made me think of. How do you celebrate Krampusnacht now that it's over? Children leave a boot outside their bedroom door. Now, it's funny. I didn't see a boot outside Rowan's door that night. The next day, they'll find either a reward for being good or a rod, which means they've been bad. A rod, a spanking rod, a switch, a stick, a dowel to beat your child with. In parts of Europe, including Austria, the Czech Republic, Germany, Hungary, Slovenia, adults take part in Krampuslauf, which means the Krampus run. People dress up as devils and they chase each other through the streets. They wear giant horns, the carved wooden masks, fur costumes. Go look this up. Look up a video. You're going to see some very interesting stuff about these things. And in popular culture, Krampus has entered pop culture outside Germany, particularly with the 2015 horror film Krampus, starring Adam Scott and Toni Collette. Now, Krampus also inspired a 2016 episode of Steve Pemberton and Bruce Shearsmith's series Inside Number 9, called The Devil of Christmas. And that was a kind of a debunked series in Great Britain, which is too bad. But they did all kinds of mysterious stuff. And they were actually journalists who wanted to start looking into stories like this. And it got a little out of hand. Their stories, they made up too many things and stuff like that. The character was also featured in, guess what? Episodes of Scooby-Doo in 2012 and American Dad in 2013. So in 2017, National Geographic published an article on how Krampus, the Christmas devil, became cool. And this detailed how art director Monty Beauchamp introduced Krampus to modern audiences with his magazine, Blab, and 2 books of Krampus postcards in 2004 and 2010. And National Geographic also reported that people in Austria have been selling Krampus souvenirs, such as figurines and chocolates, for many, many years. So there you go. That's all I know about Krampus. I got a couple of other things here, but let's take this Krampus story and turn to one more creepy Christmas-related character. You can't have Krampus without Frau Perkta. She is the terrifying Christmas witch. She's known as Frau Perkta. This reminds me of Young Frankenstein again. Remember Cloris Leachman? Every time somebody said, Frau Brucker, the horses went off in the background. And, oh, I can't do that. So, Frau Brucker. Igor would do that. Marty Feldman. Frau Brucker. So the horses would go off. But Frau Perkta, it's whatever I think of whenever I say Frau. I preface a name. Horses Winnie. Yeah, I couldn't do it tonight, JP. But every time I say the word Frau and introduce a woman's name behind it, I think of that's the effect that Young Frankenstein had on me my whole life since the late 1970s. Classic movie if you haven't seen it. Claudette says they scare the kids with those masks every year. So Frau Perkta, horses Winnie, isn't as well known as Krampus these days, which is kind of a shame when you think about it, because this Christmas time goddess, witch, all around terrifying gal, deserves a lot more press. And she's a staple in the Alpine regions of southern Germany and Austria. Climb every mountain. I'm thinking when I think of the Alpines in Austria, I think of course, The Sound of Music, when they escape over the Alps. But relatively, Frau Perkta has kind of flown under the radar in North American culture. So let's get to know her a little bit. According to Linda Radish, she's the author of the book, The Old Magic of Christmas. Frau Perkta was also known as Berkta or Bertha. And maybe that should be something we should look into, even on this show, is The Old Magic of Christmas. There's a book out there she wrote. Here, let me give you just as a side note. The Old Magic of Christmas, Yuletide Traditions from the Darkest Days of the Year. And this book came out in 2013. 'Tis the season for witches, elves, and a legion of ghosts. Not so very long ago, Yuletide was as much a chilling season of ghosts and witches as it was a festival of goodwill. In the old magic of Christmas, you'll rub elbows with veiled spirits, learn the true perils of elves, and discover the bestiary of the enchanted creatures. Rife with the more frightful characters from folklore and the season's most petulant ghosts, this book takes you on a spooky sleigh ride from the silvered firs of a winter forest to the mirrored halls of the Snow Queen. Let it snow, let it snow. Or is it let it go? Let it go. Let it go. My kids sang that all the time. My two girls. So along the way, you're going to discover how to bring the festivities into your home with cookie recipes and craft instructions, as well as tips for delving much more deeply into your relationship with the unseen. It's steeped in history, adorned with a bit of enchantment. The Old Magic of Christmas is the perfect book to read by a winter's fire with a mug of mulled cider in hand, says Deborah Blake, author of The Witch's Broom. It's a fascinating journey into the stories behind the tinsel and the bows. So says The Wild and Windy Apothecary, and so on. You can read those for yourself. So go look that up. It's a book by, who did I say that was by? Linda Radish, Raedisch. The book, The Old Magic of Christmas, Yuletide Traditions for the Darkest Days of the Year. Well, anyway, according to Linda Radish, from her book, Frau Perkta was also known as Berkta or Bertha, and has also been called Spinnstubenfrau. Spinnstubenfrau, one word. Do you want to hide a body? Build a snowman. Very good, Jason. Very good. So Spinnstubenfrau, or the spinning room lady. She's often depicted with a beaked nose made of iron. She's dressed in rags, perhaps carrying a cane, and she generally resembles a decrepit old crone. But this old crone packs a mighty wallop and carries a long knife hidden under her skirts. She also bears a resemblance to the Scandinavian goddess Frigga. I always loved that name. Well, there's not a Frigga thing wrong with believing in Frigga the goddess. So she bears a resemblance to the Scandinavian goddess Frigga. And both of them share one obsession in common: spinning. Specifically in domestic neatness, generally. And frankly, she's pretty judgy about the state of your home for a woman who dresses all in rags. Legend has it that you'd better get all your flax spun by 12th night, January 6th, for when the Christmas season was over, it would be time to set up the big upright loom, at which time you must have enough thread to warp it and start your weaving. And that's Frau Perkta's punishment for those lazy ladies who haven't finished all their weaving. You lazy ladies listening to this show, have you finished your weaving? You've got basically about, 2 weeks left before you will be called upon to warp your I was going to say still, your weaving rod, your loom. There it is, loom. Jeez. So in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, there were numerous tales of Frau Perkte trampling and even setting fire to the half-spun fibers. And there were all kinds of numerous tales of Frau Perkte trampling and setting fires to people's homes that started with their spun fibers. And if it should really irritate her, if you really irritated her, that's what she would do. And like, say, not only is your flax not spun, but your house is a total mess. This domestic goddess, witch, hates a messy house. And you've even failed to leave out a traditional bowl of porridge for her. Well, then her rampaging will extend far beyond your slovenly spinning room and your bowls of flax all over. She'll do nothing less than steal into your bedroom, disembowel you, and replace your guts with rocks and straw. Now, if you live through that, I got bad gas this morning, honey. I don't know what it is. So, but don't, basically the message was don't fuck with Frau Perkte. But Perkte does more than just check up on your spinning. Other legends equate Frau Perkte with the legend of the Wild Hunt, and they say that she flies through the night sky, attended by an army of lost souls, including the demonic-looking Perkten, her army of servants who are visually nearly indistinguishable from an army of Krampuses. So the only way to know for sure is context. Krampus rides abroad at St. Nicholas Eve, while the Perkten tend more toward Epiphany and the last 3 Thursdays before Christmas. So the last 3 Thursdays before Christmas, that's tomorrow night. That's the last of the last 3 Thursdays before Christmas, also known as Berktel nights or knocking nights. Listen through the middle of the night for knocking at your door. Also among her army of the night are the souls of unbaptized children. Now, theologically, I have a problem with that, but we'll let that go just for the sake of the tale. Legend has it if you hear the wind and the thunder roaring and rumbling through the mountains on the Berktel nights, you're really hearing the sounds of Perkte leading the wild hunt. So are you a target for the wild hunt tomorrow night? The last of the last 3 Thursdays before Christmas? Is your house in order? Do you have your flax ready for spinning? So another one of Frau Perkte's names is Holly, or Hole, Holle. She's a winter goddess whose name means shining or bright, hence her association with Epiphany, the shining night, on which the star of Bethlehem shone down. Her dual nature is expressed in the fact that there are both evil and ugly Perkten and pretty Perkten, both of whom you might find in a typical Perktenlauf, or Perkten run in the alpine regions of Europe. The pretty Perkten are all well and good, but honestly, I'm a bigger fan of the evil Perkte. She's the one that you love to fear in the days leading up to Christmas. With every passing moment, anxiety mounts as you try to finish, if not all your spinning, all of your housework and cleaning and cooking in time for the Christmas season. Because if you don't, Frau Perkte is going to get you. And then it's time for the Christmas season after that. So as you sweep and mop and clean and dust, visualize the old crone sneaking into your kitchen late at night, running her withered claw-like fingers over the baseboards and the tops of the cupboards, checking for dust. She steps and creeps through the house like a mad Martha Stewart, crossed with the Grinch who stole Christmas. And if I should fail in my housekeeping, well, there you say it. Let's just say it. It motivates one to pick up the house at Christmas time. You have guests coming? Probably already involved in that. So we'll end a little bit with the way we started in reading about Frau Perkta. This January 6th, instead of bemoaning the fact that Christmas is over, why not celebrate Perktentag by telling your kids that they'd better clean up their rooms or Frau Perkta is going to come and disembowel them in the night. Because kids love hearing that kind of thing. May Frau Perkta smile upon you and your house. We've got about a minute left, and we have to get out of here for the radio audience. So I hope you found that quite interesting. That's an interesting story that I had not heard much about in my life. So Frau Perkta and the Krampus. What a team, huh? And so what do you like this Christmas? Are you ready to be not only judged by Krampus and Frau Perkta for your cleanliness and your naughtiness, but Santa, who's also, I think Santa probably took over that job, checking to see if you're naughty or nice for a reason. It's to keep Frau Perkta and Krampus away from you? I don't know. But interesting stories, huh? And there's a whole bunch more. Annual Krampus Fest is a treat here, says Michelle Cannon-Free, over in Wisconsin. And we don't have one here. I would love to have one start up here. I think that'd be very cool. So anyway, all of you listening by radio, come on over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you too can join this motley crew. And we're going into the captain's cabin for the rest of you. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Well, welcome to the captain's cabin, everyone. Been a long day for me. I hope a long day for you. Being a long day, a good day, busy day, lots of stuff going on. So it's nice to do the radio show and then kind of be done. It's not like the old days when I could just sit around for hours. I will be very honest and tell you, I sat through most of tonight's show feeling very detached from my brain. So there were some things I was talking about where I was like, what am I saying? So just one of those days. My body is starting to shut down for the day. My brain is anyway. So we'll see how far it goes and we'll see what happens. Sarah, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Hey, Scotty.
How you doing?
It's like you said, it's been a long day.
Yes. We all have long days in different ways, don't we? So, were you busy with work today?
Yeah, it's the end of the year, so everything's becomes due. So, staying on topic relatively, it's not a surprise that at the end of the year, it's supposed to be like sort of an introspective time. That's when you see the rise of these. I mean, not only ghost stories, but, figures like Krampus and Santa Claus and, Christmas Carol, this Victorian type of, even older than Victorian type of stuff is, it's a more introspective time. So you're doing like an end of the year review. Were you a good girl or good boy this year? Were you, not idle and industrious, trying to promote, different
What do you suppose about the end of the year brings that on? Is it just our traditions have fostered that, or is our need to be introspective toward the end of the year fostered the traditions?
Well, also, not only that, it's the season because it's winter time, so you have less working day hours. You're inside with your kids more. Everything's kind of slowed down. So everybody's gathered around the fire or the Yule log or whatever. So that's the time to, sort of reconnect and regroup rather than, being throughout the year, you're just focused on going day to day to day. And then everything kind of slows down into a lull because everything, even then a season survival was seasonal, based on, you would plant your crops in the spring and harvest everything and can everything in the fall, in preparation for winter, because when there's nothing out there, right? I mean, you can't.
Yes, really I'm actually going to plant my crops in the winter. We got all kinds of the little thrift store where Rainey works. They throw out a bunch of, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. They throw things out. You just throw them in the garbage. And it's like, now you can't take it out of the garbage. But some things, we've taken out of the garbage. All the seeds for the summer.
Yeah.
They're like boxes, a big huge box full of seeds that were just thrown out. And, they found seeds in archaeological sites that are 3,000 years old that they can still plant and will still germinate.
Right. And a lot of people don't even realize that the kitchen scraps that we use from day to day, a lot of that can be replanted.
Yeah. You can take, we used to, we just lost a field guy. He's been waiting for a while. Field guy, come back. I was just going to bring you in. I was just reaching for the mouse to bring you in. And I think we've got Michael over there too. Well, let's bring in Michael instead. Michael was going to come on after Field Guy, but there he is. And there's we do that when I say we're going to plant in the wintertime. We've got all those little containers that are like eggshells, and you can plant all your crops, so to speak, for a backyard garden type of thing. We could plant, 15 rows of potatoes and carrots and lettuce and tomatoes.
Lettuce I wouldn't do now, but I mean your hard vegetables,
right,
kale and your potatoes would be good. Anything that can go like underground right now.
Yeah,
that's typically people.
Field Guy, come back. Shane, come back.
Yeah, what is it?
How you doing, Michael?
Yeah. Radishes. I was thinking because I bought a bunch of beets the other day, and you can distill beets into like sugar. So because we grow the sugar cane here also, and but in the wintertime, I think a lot of it is you plant like a winter crop of wheat or something to kind of protect the soil or whatever. But I think a lot of it is just the holiday blues, because I felt detached today too. It's just like everything is ramping up. The older you get, Christmas, you don't have the same magic.
I'm not detached emotionally tonight. I feel detached, like physically, like my brain is weird. Like I could just lay down and go to sleep. And I've been that way the last couple
I did
of
that
hours.
earlier.
It's like, I should not get up so early.
Yeah,
I think I woke up at I went to bed at about 3 a.m. this morning. So I was working on something. Just sitting here and I work on things and I look up and I go, it's 3 o'clock. And so I went to bed, and then I have to get up at 7 with the kids at the very latest, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I've been running ever since. So one of those days.
Somebody told me one time, they said, you're not a young pup no more. They said, no, yeah. So the older we get, it's harder for the late nights and early mornings. And like I said, and with the holiday stuff, it just takes it out of you. It's a toll.
I used to love it. I'd work late nights, and then I'd get up at the crack of dawn. I was always a morning person, and the late nights never bothered me. I averaged probably 4 hours a night, and I enjoyed my life that way. I did a lot of stuff. Recent handful of years, I'd take a nap in the afternoon. If I eat lunch and if I went to bed after 9 o'clock at night, which is every night with this show, but used to be every night, I'm like, I'm done. 11 o'clock comes around, I'm like, I'm out.
Well, plus, there's also the amount of sunlight that everybody gets, and because it definitely affects mood. I mean, now it gets dark at like 5, 6 o'clock. As opposed to summer, it's like 8 o'clock. It's like I have plenty of time, and then it's like
we'll be. I know in the middle of winter, the shortest day of the year, it's usually we're down to about 4:30 in the afternoon. It's getting dark outside, and when you think the opposite end of the year in June, the sun was up till 10:30 at night. Well, you had light until 10:30 at night, and it's getting there.
I don't
it's
know how
been
people
nice
do it in Alaska.
in that it's going to be 50 degrees on Christmas Eve day, which is nice up here. So it's been getting warmer every day this week. So it's going to hit us sometime soon, maybe next week sometime. Get back down
with the less amount of sunlight. In the office, we often see a rise in the low vitamin D levels, because there's not getting as much sun. So, it definitely affects the body.
Right. So
I'll take a supplement for that.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I have to.
Take,
where I'm in the wintertime, I do.
Rainey's got vitamin D up there.
Like I said,
I should be taking some of that.
I was looking for it here, but I was going to say, because they sent it to me. It helps. It helps with your mood. It helps with brain fog and stuff like that. Because that's like I said, with these dark early night, no wonder they thought everything was bad. It come out of like Krampus and all that, because they got 24 hours of darkness. There's all kinds of bad stuff.
Way up in the Arctic Circle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, field guy, did you die or something? Are you still out there? He was here. He sat here for only about 5 minutes, and I didn't get him in right away.
Maybe having internet issues.
Oh, maybe. Oh, there's Daniel Craig. He was here. He says, I put the Krampus in my son's yard. As he gets more traffic in front of his house, they're building 300 apartments across the street. Probably apartments, I think you meant, from him. Perhaps next year I'll add Frau Perkta. Nice, Daniel. Very cool. I ought to do that for Christmas. We've got the Grinch out there now. I'd love to build like a big 8-foot Krampus. Wouldn't that be cool? In the summertime, work on it can't be paper mache. What do you have to build him out of so he doesn't melt in the snow? You got to build him out of something that lasts. Professor Bauer, what do I build a Krampus out of to survive the winter in my front yard? No sound.
You can borrow one of those statues from the satanic temples, from the satanic church.
Satanic temple.
For borrow
from
borrow
the thrift store.
Images of Baphomet. I mean, and it's interesting to see how you have Pan, you have Baphomet, you have Krampus, you have Wendigo. It's all culturally adopted into other cultures and turned into something good or bad, or it's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
And then you always have the regionality of it. Like you were saying, it was all in Germany and Lapland and all the northern Eastern European, all that stuff.
Daniel Craig, you should call in and talk to us about Foster's Lament. I want you to call in, Daniel.
Oh.
So what do you think, Professor?
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to all this.
In your front yard?
Well, I was listening to all this and all these different stories you recounted, and I thought that, it's always good to get a refresher on the historical events of whatever it is. And they're basically these stories of these either imaginary or real creatures that have a control over you, and you need to pay attention to them because they will come when you least expect it. They will snatch you and they will give you a cramp.
Right.
You will go through some kind of monster under the bed, in the closet, down the hall, on the roof, in the basement, wherever it might be.
It's that whole boogeyman phenomena. You try to keep kids in line. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
an adult.
If bribery doesn't work, then you call Krampus over and beat the
pretty much
car out of them.
When I was growing up, at least in my family, we didn't need monsters or boogeymen. It was your mom, your dad, grandma, grandpa. If they find out, you're toast. That's what we were all corralled with, as far as being fearful of making sure that we weren't violating any of the rules, that we were being putting in extra effort on the good stuff, the cleaning, helping, the being nice, the never talking back, the not being seen when you're not, or heard when you're not.
See you, Josh Kemp.
All that stuff. It's interesting how it used to be, at least again from my experience, it was that familial thing. There was nobody ever said God's going to kick your ass when you have to account for this. We didn't get God. We got grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, cousins, family, and or the police.
Yeah.
So we weren't. I didn't have any of these childhood trauma stories to have to deal with. I had to deal with real shit. Because from what I've heard of all these stories, nobody's ever seen one. They hear about them, they get scared by them.
Krampus is one of those guys like Santa Claus. I mean, he's got such a specific task that involves raiding so many specific people and children, or giving gifts, that it's impossible for him to be a real thing by any common sense. Now you start talking about a skinwalker, you might be onto something that's very different.
Very different. The old shapeshifter modality, right?
Yes,
Talk
shapeshifter.
to me about going from, I mean, before there was, well, the legend actually of the event and the entity goes way back into the indigenous stories and their mythos, their cosmology. But what do you think shamans do when they go into their trances and they become another animal? They go through at least at a minimum a psychological transformation. And there's a whole bunch of stories that there's also the physical stuff too, including not just transformation into some other beast or some other creature, but levitation, doing all kinds of
Levitation.
really bizarre, that we would consider bizarre, and most likely, a requirement for these stories. You got
that was the word you could get John Ward going off on. You wanted to get under his skin real tight, real quick. You just say, John, what about levitation? Say, oh, levitation, because it was all associated with building in Egypt. So, yeah.
Well, what do you think about that?
Oh, well, what was the ranch out there?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead,
I was
Michael.
going to say that ranch where all the skinwalkers and UFOs are, all that came up for sale for skinwalker, yeah. You could pick your guitars up, go out there, do some DMT, and just check it out.
Oh yeah,
do like a whole study.
No, I'm not messing with. I don't want to
money.
mess with tribal lands, things that used to be tribal lands that had tribal shit going on them. That's not something that necessarily draws me in. I could if I had the right guide with me, but I don't want to mess with that stuff. Now, is that superstitious on my part, or is it me saying I have seen these kinds of things that are real, and I'm not going to fuck with it?
I think it's more reverence and deference to its.
Oh, there's some of that too, but
because when you think about it, the only stuff that I've had, at least again, and this is just my experience, and I know there's a whole variety out there by a whole bunch of people, but I get a sense about something, and that's where I start, and usually where I end. It's like we keep talking about frequencies, or I keep talking about frequencies. Everything's a frequency. All matter, all everything is based on frequencies. And so they have their own rhythm, their own timbre, their own key, their own vibration, and they either resonate with you or you don't. And that's the first filter I typically use when I encounter new information, like a what the fuck moment. When those happen, you need to be fully engaged to the experience and try to figure out what's going on as much as possible, depending on the circumstances. It could be, anything from just an aberration in front of you, or having some kind of physical hallucinogenic experience along the lines of what DMT and psilocybin, mescaline, all the psychedelics do, ayahuasca. There seems to be this place where you can go in your mind, and wherever you go is just as real to you. It feels just as real as the real that you are normally experiencing.
It's like Talos 5, Talos 4.
Yes, exactly.
It's like they say about tapping into ancient sites of power. Whenever I go to the Holy Land, it's definitely, I feel different. It's a different energetic experience. Even when I'm traveling in the country, and there's certain places that I didn't even know there were religious sites or anything, like for Native Americans. And I would say, is there something here? Because it's like you feel different. And then they would say, oh, this is an ancient burial mound, or this used to be where people would worship. And I didn't even know, at the time, I felt something, but I mean, to me, that just gives me a little bit of validation that, that different types of energy focuses, and it's definitely out there. We live in a sea of energy. So,
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that you have places, I think, at least, again, this is my perspective. Geometry seems to be the language, at least mathematically and symbolically, of nature. Geometry is everywhere. And we've been able to kind of put some metrics around this thing, and Plato did all his solids, and Archimedes, and I mean all these, and all the Pythagorean models were about the way that shapes seem to naturally occur. They appear to be a characteristic, a nature of our reality. And so those in and of themselves have their own vibrational intersections as they weave in and out of one another and connect in all those apparently magical geometrical shapes and the energy they create. But you can also, so there's the natural state of all the points on the geometry of reality, but you can also go and implant energy frequency on any one of those points. So a lot of the sacred sites in the Holy Land and places around the earth seem to have some kind of an alignment with what's called the grid, having ley lines where there's this geometry in earth, and where those geometrical points occur, there seems to be a whole bunch of extra stuff that happens. And so you have a lot of religious and focused attention on places. And then you have the added energy and frequencies that's been put on it. Like here's the rock where Jacob was spared, right?
Yes.
So now we're going to build this beautiful structure over it. And then we're going to create this environment around it. So that's added frequencies that have been put on the natural frequencies of what's going on there. And that, I think, is what we experience, like you were talking about, Sarah. You can feel the difference when you go to the Holy Land. Well, those places have been, the amount of frequencies and the intent of those frequencies that have been concentrated there over the millennia have created its own resonance.
right.
And that in and of itself makes it very special.
It's very interesting. I have a friend, a female friend of mine, roughly about Rainey's age. She, a few years ago, she had gone to Israel, and she's gone several times. She has lots of friends in Israel. And she showed me a photograph of some site somewhere. She told me what the significance of the site was. There was a building there, a shrine, and they were inside. And she had a series of pictures, nothing out of the ordinary. But one picture looked like somebody had taken it and spun it. Like, when you used to do art when you were kids and you do the spinny art. And it looked like the whole picture had been twisted several times around. And I took it, and it was when Rocky and I were doing radio, and I took it and I untwisted the picture as best I could in Photoshop, and you could see a woman standing there, because what I saw when it was twisted, it looked like a sandaled foot, and it was a very nice courtyard was the picture. Like there were potted plants in this outdoor courtyard and sunshine coming in, and it was a beautiful, pristine building on an old site. And so you saw a sandal. And then as I started to be able to pull it apart and untwist it, you could see what looked like a long white robe, a skirt. And it was like somebody was taking a step forward, because one foot was forward, there was another one back. And as you went up this figure, it had a cloth veil over its head, pulled back. And, you could see it had dark hair. It was a woman. Definitely a woman, and there were definite characteristics, but I could not untwist the photograph enough to make out details. And the thing is, she showed me all the pictures before and after of that whole shrine area, that courtyard, and there was nobody there. And there was the one picture that has somebody hidden in the twisting. Now, it was interesting. She emailed me about a month ago, and she said, "Scotty, it's happening again." And they own a little farm not far from here, 15, 20 minutes from here. And she and her husband. And there was, again, pictures she's taken of her yard. And there was something that was twisted. The whole picture was this spiral. And there's no effect on her camera. I mean, she went through all this. We talked about it in great detail a couple of years ago when she was in Israel. And so we're going to get together and take a look at those pictures and try to see what we can untwist out of them. But that's something, there was something you said that triggered that in my head, is that
about the imprint of the frequencies that somebody
imprint of frequencies.
Do you think it's a formation of a portal?
Yeah.
That's what I've wondered. And she asked that, and that was my first pseudo conclusion. I say pseudo because there was no way of knowing for sure. But and she showed me this picture because it's the same exact effect that she had in the picture in Israel. And
so,
she
I mean,
said-
if you're going to do that, I would assume, try to take a look around what's there geologically.
Yes.
If it is the ground content similar to what it was in Israel, or is there a certain
I've got to find out from her again where this site was, and I'm just gonna, by any chance, I'm gonna send her a quick message, and if she's up, she'll see it. But I'm gonna send her a quickie and say, where was this? Go ahead, Michael. What was that?
But that goes back to energy. That goes back when you're talking about a sea of energy. The one thing they said, energy can never be created or destroyed. It is what it is. And when you have ley lines and temples and everything, all your temples are built like big antennas. Oh, the professor is shaking his head. And I saw something one time. They said the reason all the temples and churches and everything had this big steeple on top was to focus all the energy and they're all built, like you said, in certain locations, even Stonehenge. These people are drawn to a certain region, like the pyramids are built on ley lines. The pyramids in South America are built on ley lines, and they're all pointed like an antenna, like they're trying to focus something. And I forget which, I think it's Einstein or one of them said that energy cannot be either be created or destroyed. And I'm thinking, okay, so if you're concentrating all this energy that's in the universe into different places, that's one thing that just always like kind of stuck in. And I thought, well, that's crazy. If it cannot be created or destroyed, where does it go, or how does it conform into the universe? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the whole thing about, and this is one of the things, I did a Facebook post on the knowledge apocalypse, because that to me is what's happening. All of the information that we've been told in all the different domains from the sciences, the medicine, health, technology, the governance, political system, the legal system, the financial system, the academic system, the media models, all of it is broke. And we're watching it all break while we're all using it. So it has an additional level of frustration and pain, but everything's broke and it's in the process of going through a transformation. So to your point, Michael, about the whole energy cannot be created or destroyed, there's all kinds of really, and I highly recommend Sheldrake's book, Science Set Free. He goes through the top 10 dogmas of science. And one of them is, and that's number 2 on his list, is energy can't be created or destroyed. The problem is that everywhere there's everywhere that is looked at, and where they look, there is nothing but more. Everything is expanding. In fact, when they did the initial calculations to create the Big Bang model, because they couldn't explain, certainly it couldn't be God. It had to be something, but something snapped us into place and into existence. They have no explanation how. There's no what was there before, other than it was apparently a space, infinitesimally small, and at the same time infinitesimally dense. And whatever that was, and it was finite, so the whole thing was infinite. But it decided to become finite. It decided to unfold into the reality that we inhabit. And with it came all of these apparent laws and rules and habits of the way that that materium would unfold. Well, there's no explanation for any of that. It's just like Terence McKenna once said, modern science is like, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. And that's what our current science is based on. So when they first saw that the calculation of Big Bang said, well, it's going to start as a Big Bang and it will end in the Big Crunch. Everything collapsed because of entropy and boom, it'll, and we should see signs of that deceleration, that contraction now based on our math models, men and machines. But as they looked, they said, wait a minute, it's still expanding. We're not seeing any signs of entropy. And then they continued to fine tune their tools, techniques, toys, and telemetry. And then they found that it's not only expanding, but it's accelerating. It's actually going faster now than it was the last time they looked. Okay, so where is this supposed no more energy or matter? Where is it apparently coming from that's driving the accelerated expansion of our known reality? Doesn't make any sense. You don't need a PhD to look at that and go, well, what's your answer? And they either say it's this mathematically predictive model that we kind of say we think this is what would happen. Okay. Does it match the observation? Well, we haven't seen it yet, so we can't say, and that's where dark matter and dark energy came from. The science that we have is broke. The way it looks at it's done some amazing shit. What we're doing right now is a result of the technology side of science. And that's a materialistic, mechanistic model that enables us to control the reality and the materium that we inhabit. So we've made these things out of other stuff. We took dirt, we turned it into computers, took sand, used that for the chips. We use sand for glass. I mean, plastic is like this amazing thing that George Carlin goes on about. Well, all these people about, I'm going to save the planet and you got to stop putting plastic into the ocean. He says, you're all nuts. What if the earth made humans so that it would have plastic? And what if that plastic is just considered its children? I mean, just the whole idea
of plastic ain't alive.
It would be a new paradigm, earth and plastic. But to come back to the serious point of it, there is that second law is bullshit. If you take these 10 assumptions, fundamentals that Sheldrake lays out, you examine them as questions, you'll find out that they're actually assumptions with no basis. One of the assumptions is your mind is totally the result of the physiology of your brain. Your memories are in your brain. We can go in and track those little fuckers. We can see how you think. We can do this interface of mind and machine and suck out your memories and put your consciousness into some cyborg, so some chronocrom.
Or something like that.
Right? Well, our science, we're like, it's like, I would say the origins of some of our primates when they first discovered they could make this thing called fire. And once that ability to make something that has all these benefits, so you can cook the man's meal on it, or you can cook the man on it. So you've got a lot of uses, very versatile tool. But having that ability changed the way that the intelligences, in fact, it caused kind of a merging of intelligences. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but basically, there's different intelligences we have: historical, technological, social, having and hunting, being able to pursue your prey, knowing the prey. That's an intelligence. Knowing how to make the fire is a different intelligence. How to communicate, social intelligence, cultural intelligence. Well, all of those all of a sudden seem to come together because before 50,000 years ago, we don't find any organized kind of stuff we find little groups of animals scattered all over the planet. But in about 50,000 years ago, there started to be this organized clump of carbon-based meat sacks who got together and emerged and molded and created and grew more expansion. And there's another thing about that whole thing of energy can't be, or matter can't be created or destroyed. Explain my kids to me.
Huh. Yeah, my kids are destroyers. They, my kids are consumers, destroyers, and non-productive.
Well, I wasn't speaking of those characteristics that they all apparently share. I was talking about the fact that where did they come from? Apparently, I was involved in their manifestation.
I was going to say.
Well, let me tell you how this worked, Doc.
I was going to say, so that's a whole different story. Yeah.
The mommies and daddies.
But on that thing about science being broken.
There it is.
Would you say it's broken or just incomplete?
What is it broken or incomplete?
He said science.
Science? It's broke.
Science.
Well, it's both.
You said, yeah. You said the science. Yeah.
Science
So
it's incomplete in the science, and it's broken the way they apply it.
So you don't think it could ever evolve?
Well, it can and it should if it follows its own fundamental principle of the scientific method, which is constant questioning. The problem is there's a bunch of staid points of view and assumptions that have been propagated and haven't been challenged. They've been accepted and adopted as the truth, period. And the problem is people just go, oh, okay, that's the truth. Fine. What's the next thing I need to learn? But if you stop and you look at the fundamental component of whatever that knowledge base, knowledge silo domain is, you question, why does it exist? What is its definition? Is the definition accurate? Because apparently there's a whole bunch of them that aren't accurate at all, yet they are taught in the fundamental physics and science classes as dogma, as definitive, and they're not. So Einstein, for example, E = mc squared. I've been got involved in a couple of physics pages on Facebook, and I go in and see what people are talking about, and I thought, okay, I'd throw some questions in because there are.
I went to these. Just think of the ramifications of that statement you just made. So I spend my social media time over on a
Facebook page on physics.
Physics page, geometry. That's how tired my brain is. So
but, I mean, I do take issue with that because
geometry or physics.
What Professor Bauer was saying about not building on preconceived concepts and stuff, because you're never going to move forward in that way. Because if you're constantly, it's like trying to constantly reinvent the wheel. I have to reinvent math before I can do any science, right? Every time. I mean, I have a finite existence, and you're telling me I have to create a whole system of understanding before I can do anything, let alone move forward. I mean, we would still be in the Dark Ages.
Right. I mean, think about and Scotty knows this. Think about the ancient buildings. Some of the Roman roads that were built over 2,000 years ago are still in great shape.
Yeah.
And still function. And these guys didn't have any engineering PhDs. They didn't have any, masonry goddess stuff or god stuff. They got tools. Somebody had instructions. Somebody understood how to actually
make stuff.
And they went and made this stuff, and it's still.
Now, it's interesting. A little earlier, and that's why I picked this book up off the shelf, because there's something I had written about that crossed over something that you have moved on from a long time ago in this conversation, because we had a couple of different things go on. But in this book, The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, Chapter 5, I entitled The Watchers. And I wanted to get into something a little deeper into the chapter. But I started with this quote, and I thought this was interesting. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel. The creature said that from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But further on into this chapter, I have a section here on page 93. The section's entitled Where Their Feet Hit the Ground. Now you'll see where this links up with what you were saying. I had written here, the Watchers. They first appeared on the scene in Sumer. It seems literally means the land of the Watchers. For American author Zechariah Sitchin, which, by the way, I have to make a note here. I did not say a lot about Sitchin. I have some problems with Sitchin and the way he devised the things that he wrote about. But I'm quoting him here for a purpose. Zechariah Sitchin, they're alien beings whose specific task is to orbit the Earth, monitoring events on Earth. For Sitchin, the Watchers are not a race or a species. They're merely a job specification. Their colleagues had abandoned their ships and had landed on Earth. They continued to orbit the Earth. Those who did land either mated or genetically engineered mankind into its present form. As a consequence, mankind worshipped the Watchers as gods. Now, it's interesting here. Going a step further back, however, it's recorded in the book of Enoch that these... Sorry, my light is very bad here, even though it looks bright on the camera. That these so-called Watchers descended first to the slopes and the foothills of Mount Hermon, Ha-Hermon in Hebrew, also known as Jebel al-Shaykh, I think it is, in Aramaic, meaning the mountain of the chief. The mountain is actually a cluster of mountains made up of 3 distinct summits that straddle the current-day border between Lebanon and Syria in the highly political, much disputed Golan Heights region of northern Israel. To set it in more modern context, it was this mountain that exchanged hands back and forth between Israel and Syria during the Six-Day War of 1967 and the Yom Kippur War of 1973. On this mountain, it is said, the Watchers first descended to the earth and made their pact to cohabitate with human women and to teach forbidden skills to mankind. It does say in the book of Enoch that these 200 prefects from heaven, they called them, the Watchers, they came down and set foot on the slopes of Mount Hermon. And I've got a picture of an inset of Mount Hermon here. And in the occult science of numerology, the number 33 represents the ultimate attainment of consciousness. Keeping that in mind, it is very interesting to note that the geographic location of Mount Hermon is the very place where the Watchers are said to have descended to the earthly plane. It lies on the 33rd parallel, which is a latitude of 33 degrees north of the equator. If you trace the 33rd parallel before, this was a surprise to me when I was writing this book. I was writing this back in 2011. If you trace the 33rd parallel from Mount Hermon to the exact geographic global opposite from Mount Hermon on the 33rd parallel, you'll find yourself directly on top of the most controversial mystic place in current ufological history, Roswell, New Mexico. Mount Hermon, where the Watchers descended to the earth, and Roswell, New Mexico, are exact polar opposites on the same 33rd degree north latitude. And the global coordinates of Mount Hermon and the Roswell crash are no accident and speak to some deeper, perhaps secret significance. Bill Burns, who authored a bunch of books on aliens, he was UFO Hunter was his show on TV. He was actually an attorney throughout his life, and he was a Shakespearean scholar as well as an architectural PhD. He had a PhD in Shakespearean literature, a PhD in architecture, I don't remember what era, but he ends up being this big UFO guy. But he gave me this quote. He said, if aliens used the 33rd latitudinal line as a waypoint, a landing point for planet Earth, what biblical people saw thousands and thousands of years ago on Mount Hermon were entities that perhaps came down from the sky. They called them angels. Could the Watchers, who descended to the slopes of Mount Hermon thousands of years ago, according to the Book of Enoch, and the UFOs that repeatedly crashed at Roswell in 1947, reportedly crashed in 1947, could they be from the same extraterrestrial race? If these two, now, by the way, in this book, I'm not trying to establish that these things are so. I'm discussing these just for people who are hearing this for the first time. I had like PZ Myers and others who were trying to take me to task. Oh, you're just another one of those UFO.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder how. Where does the 33rd parallel fall when it comes over Egypt? Does it line up with anything?
It doesn't. Egypt would be south of the 33rd parallel.
Okay.
Quite south, because you've got Lebanon and Syria, and Mount Hermon is up here in the north of Israel.
Right.
Then you got to go down Israel and down and over to Egypt, down in northern Africa.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, they'd be quite a bit different. But just a little bit on the end of this, I ask, could the Watchers be the same, and the UFOs reportedly crashed at Roswell be from the same extraterrestrial race? If these two events spanning the entirety of recorded human history indeed involve alien races, then they've been here with us for a very long time, since the beginning of time. And it begs the question of whether or not they were left behind to monitor us or to help establish and guide our civilization and culture. And the even bigger question, are they still among us today? Some Christian ufologists, such as Chuck Missler, believe that the sons of God in Genesis 6:2 are actually extraterrestrials, or gray aliens, if you will, and that these beings are actually fallen angels or demons that have appeared during the antediluvian times in order to genetically alter the human race and to pollute the bloodline of Jesus, according to his theology. Thus, the Nephilim would be the hybrid race of these beings in this view. And of course, the reason I brought that up is you talked about this grid, Professor Bauer, that's all linked up, because off of this 33rd parallel, there's so many other things all around the globe that line up with this 33rd parallel. Bill Burns happened to think it was like Anthony F. Sanchez's book, The UFO Highway.
Mm-hmm.
He happened to think that it was one of those guiding parallels around the planet. And so many things line up with it. And then you branch off of that, and all these other, the ancient sites, all the pyramidal type sites in antiquity, from Egypt and Africa and South America and everywhere around the world, China, all these sites you can map them on a grid.
Right.
And
so what's fascinating to me is that we have all of the tools, techniques, toys, and telemetry to measure those. We know where they are. Okay.
Yes.
And it's the same tools that the science community, the geologists, archaeologists, the people that are giving Hancock a whole bunch of shit, all of them use the same tools.
Yes.
The whole difference here, and this is to my point earlier about why it's broken, and I was talking about the individual silos. The concept of going and looking at this imagery and this telemetry and these places and frequencies, and the reason behind that what they are and what they may be doing is not accepted by science. It's only accepted by those who are looking at it and going, well, I want to go explore this. So you've got all these different individual independent archaeologists, Hancock on down, who are doing independent work, and including you and John and Maria. I mean, all of that's being done, but it is typically looked at as outside of the orthodoxy, outside of the knowledge stack that they've got and whatever they've stuck in there. But this goes to Tesla's quote that he famously quipped, if you want to understand the universe, think in energy, frequency, and vibration. That's how everything works. That's where all those frequencies are. But that is known as the ether. And the ether is what, and that, so the unseen metaphysics, the mystical, if you will, but has been proven by scientific models and methods and empirical data, is this ether thing doesn't exist in quantum physics. It doesn't exist in any of the other disciplines in science. Why is that? Why is something that has got so much history, so much empirical data, and just observational reality that we all experience? I mean, how many times have you felt like somebody was watching you and you turned around to see that somebody was watching you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, how does that happen? What is you have a sensation that you're being looked at?
So my dog knows when I'm staring at her.
Right? That's a whole realm of the ether, of the ethereum, as opposed to materium. Okay, I'll do it. I'll take a shot. That's the part.
That was a setup. You had your shot already poured.
That's the part that's missing in today's science. Today's science dismisses this ethereum, this atmosphere, this thing called space.
Yeah.
In fact, we are told that space is a vacuum and that nothing can exist in a vacuum. That's why you see all these, corpses just immediately freeze and then disappear in the vacuum that have left the capsule unexpectedly and are having an unplanned lunar or extracurricular activity. So simple question. If space is a vacuum, how is the Earth in it? If nothing can exist in a vacuum, how does the Earth exist in space, which is apparently a vacuum?
Yeah.
How does the sun? How does everything else that we see exist if nothing can exist in a vacuum? And that's what space is. That's a little turd I tossed into one of the physics pages, one of the comments in there. But what I did is I said, I put up a post and it was from NASA. And I had 4 things that says where physics breaks down: speed of light, black holes, the Planck length, and the Big Bang. Physics breaks down in all of them. It stops. It can't complete itself to explain itself because it's not known. So I put that up there just to see who would bite and what they do.
Yeah.
Oh man, you got these hardcore physicists that Planck's, Newton, and this and that, and EMC. All this is just, it's definitive. It's been proven all the time, describing theories. All the time describing it correctly as the theory of E equals MC squared, the theory of Schrodinger's wave equation.
Right.
All of that. They say they're theories, but they've been proven. They're facts. I keep saying, well, then they'd be facts. They wouldn't be theories, right?
Right.
And it tosses them into a tailspin, and they finally end up calling me, unattractive names and questioning my
Unattractive.
So the dogma, the stigma, the authoritative aspect that has been adopted by the people that have been given the highest respect and authority. People gave Fauci the authority before he went and fumbled that authority. And there are examples across every spectrum you can think of. Anytime there's an authoritative component, that if that authority is not being questioned and checked, then it's going to go off the rails, and you have to go in and deal with it. And that's what I'm saying. We're seeing off the rail performance by all of the authorities and all those who have been given the responsibility for a knowledge domain, for an infrastructure, for a service, a system, doesn't matter. They've all screwed the pooch. The banks have screwed the pooch. The insurance companies have screwed the pooch. The pharmaceuticals, the government, everything is broken.
Yeah.
None of it is working in anywhere near efficient, let alone at some level of being optimal. It's all just grinding along, and we're all in the midst of it, putting up with it, trying to swim through the crap in the waves that we're being inundated with. And we're trying to bounce and parry off of shit, and because it's all broken at the same time and it's all flowing broken together. That's my point. So
I get it.
So the realization,
it's like a dumpster fire on a sinking ship.
Yeah, it's like a rolling big old dump down a hill, and it just keeps collecting more garbage as it goes down a hill. It's just spinning and gaining more momentum and kinetic energy. So when it hits, it's going to make a big mess. But and that's the thing for me. Aside from all of the other filters that I put on shit, so I try to keep the crap out and let the good stuff in, is you've got to pay attention to the fact that the entire landscape is littered crap. And if you look at everything from that perspective first, instead of saying, well, that's always been good, and I'm not going to consider that one crap. My
neighborhood's good.
If you think about something and question it, as I was saying, this is what Sheldrake did with his Science Set Free. He took the dogmas, and instead of assuming they were correct, he questioned them to check them. And it turns out that they're all assumptions. None of them can be proven. In fact, a lot of it has been disproven. The second law of thermodynamics, the whole entropy thing, says that eventually, whatever something is, its energy will dissipate, and it will just die off. Except nobody's ever seen it. It's never happened. There is no evidence of that.
I've always said humans, I said I'm entropic. All of us are suffering entropy.
Yeah, well, so there is
necessarily where we're experiencing.
You're right. There is the point of perspective that is very important. However, because this is why the whole conservation of matter and energy falls apart, because that is what's happening. It is always creating, and then that immediately tosses the second law of thermodynamics out the window, because if there's always constant creation and there's always acceleration and expansion, then where's this entropy thing that's supposed to happen in the second law of thermodynamics? It doesn't exist.
Right. But
people, they get so dogmatic. It's like Morpheus said to Neo in The Matrix when he was going into the big section where they had all the little cubes and the bodies and the plugs and everything going in. And Morpheus said, Neo, just remember, when you go in there, not everyone will want to be unplugged.
That's right.
In fact, they will fight to stay plugged. So just remember that. This is not going to be this great awakening. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, thanks for getting that tube out of my ass.
Would you want to... I was thinking about this for some reason, because I've been working on a project that involves working with a lot of Star Trek stuff from Paramount. Imagery and things I'm putting together, packaging for a client that's licensed some stuff from Star Trek. And I was digging through. I got the password and username to go into Paramount CBS and look at all their thousands upon thousands upon thousands. This archival library of everything from pictures and logos and shows and art and all this approved stuff from Star Trek. Every single episode, every single movie, every single this, that, the other thing, comic book. All the way down, every licensed item, all the way down to all the different shows that they own the license to. But so I was thinking about this recently. I saw some pictures, and that's why I brought up Talos 4 earlier. Wasn't Captain Pike? The first episode of Star Trek filmed took place on Talos 4. And it's the only United Federation of Planets planet that holds a death penalty to visit it because of his experiences there, as it comes out in the later episodes. But the Telosians, they were the big-brained people, you know.
Yeah,
the
I mean, they did not only a great job with the big brain, but
it
the
was great.
veins. Remember the veins pulsing
Yep.
through there? I looked at that and I said, "Oh man, that's got to
by
be
the way,
that's got to be hell
bit
after a good drinking session."
Hell yeah. A bit of trivia. The actor who played one of the Telosians, the little frail looking with the big head, that was actually a woman. And you saw her, I can't remember her name. There was another famous old television episode that she was famous for. The Twilight Zone with the old woman whose phone line went down in a storm and her husband was calling her from the grave. Do you remember that episode?
Vaguely.
She thought somebody was making crank calls.
Yeah.
Hello! And she's this kind of crinkly old lady, even back then in the 60s. And she picks up that phone, and the voice was like, hello, kind of thing. And they don't figure it out until the very end, and then and the plot. You have to watch it. But the Telosians offered Christopher Pike in the future episode. They were able to use the cage, it was called. These Telosians, they had the mental ability to take somebody like you or I or Sarah into like a zoo. And they had them behind glass, chairs and beds, and not much in there because they were able to project onto them such elaborate illusion that they could live the rest of their lives doing whatever they wanted to do, wherever they wanted to do it, as long as they could pull it from their memories. And with Pike, they tried to keep him as a prisoner, hence the cage. As in a zoo, they were going to treat him kindly and feed him and give him whatever illusion he wanted. And then, of course, and I'm just giving the background for the simple little question I'm going to ask, but that episode never made it to air until they started the series with William Shatner, and somewhere in the first or the second season, I think it was late in the first season, maybe the second, they did the Menagerie, where Captain Pike, who Jeffrey Hunter played him, was now dead, but they wanted to use this old episode, and they incorporated it into a very well-written 2-part episode where Spock kidnaps his old captain, Pike, who's been disabled. He can't speak. He can't do anything. He rides around in this wheelchair, and all he can do is that the lights say yes or no. We're so much more advanced than that even now, 50 years later, but back then. So, and he kidnaps him. He's going to take him back to Talos 4. Hijacks the Enterprise and all the tech stuff behind it. And so they hold a trial to court-martial him. And, but they make it to Talos 4. And, of course, Pike decides he wants to stay there because he can live this illusion of being whole again. And with the woman that he left behind, who was a shattered... Sarah, have you ever seen this episode?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Just so it has some context for some people. If anybody out there, if you've seen that, that's how they incorporated the first episode of Star Trek ever filmed that never made it to air. And they put it into this 2-parter later in the series. Well, it's interesting. The question came up, and I don't know why I asked myself this question. This is just like yesterday or the day before. And I thought, it's probably from looking at all this Star Trek stuff as I was working on this packaging. And it's very visual packaging. So I've got to go through all these visuals, pull these things out. And I'm looking through and I'm finding all this stuff. And it's like, wow, this is cool. And
it sounds like the Library of Alexandria of Star Trek.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And everything, Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, Scream. There's all kinds of properties that they have in that library, and so it got me thinking while I'm working. Wow, if I ever had the ability to, let's say, I was broken down, or even when you get old, that somebody like that would take you on, keep your body healthy as they can, nurture it, nutrition it, all of those things, but give you the illusion that you were young again. You're not really up and running around, but you are in this illusion. You're talking about being plugged in, in the Matrix. Some people don't want to be unplugged. So here's the question. It's a vastly hypothetical question because so far as we know, it can never happen that we know of, at least currently, unless we're in it now. But if you could be plugged into something or given the illusion of a perfect life in anywhere you'd want to be, and you could change that up. You go, today I want to do something else with someone else. Be like having a holodeck from Star Trek, except it's imagination. And these beings controlled their minds, all in exchange for you being our zoo. We'll feed you. We'll keep you healthy. We'll give you anything you want. You can go anywhere you want, be anywhere you want. And of course, it was a cage. It was against some people's will. Would you stay in something like that if you had that opportunity? Let's say there are people who have stroked out, to say it indelicately, and they have no ability to use their bodies the way they used to. Language is bad, Alzheimer's, whatever it might be. What if somebody were able to give you the illusion of a perfect life? Would you grasp at that? Would you want to go, I'll try. Let me try that first before I sign on the dotted line and you have me for the rest of my life? I don't know. Does something like that, as silly and science fiction-y and outlandish as that example is, would any of you find that appealing?
Oh no! As the alternative was, you're crippled, you can't move, and your whole thing is very limited. The illusion might be a good escape. And there's a show that's on Amazon. It's called Upload, and it's like people who are like into death or whatever, and they live in a virtual reality hologram type deal.
Oh, my wife was watching
So,
that, and I caught about 20 minutes of that, and I went, "This is stupid." I said, "I'm not watching this."
But
not
to
insult.
What was the other one? What was the other one where they had it? Where they had the little disc that they'd always keep your consciousness on, and you could swap it from body to body. Carbon or something. What was it? Ultra carbon or something. And but that ideal has been around for a long time because that's another way of immortality. And like the professor said, we live in a meat suit that is very delicate, and you're always trying to squeeze more time out of your years, and the older you get, the quicker it goes. It's Art Bell called it the quickening. And that's somebody who paved a lot of the things that we're talking about now. Yeah. And it seems like he's very, very forgotten. Now George is the poster child for Coast to Coast AM. But
Michael, I
Art Bell.
I can tell you that I listened to Art Bell back in the 80s as well. And, he had his issues. He had his hiatus, and he came back with Midnight in the Desert, I think. Yeah. But he's not forgotten in the circles that I'm watching. He hasn't
very well respected still.
I don't think he's done any shows in the last couple of years. But
he's dead. He's dead.
When did he die?
He's passed. Yeah, he's passed.
6, 7, 8 years ago. There was something about his wife had died, and then he was getting a little. If I mix this up, if there's anybody watching this or later in a recording, if you see this, I don't know all the facts behind it, but what I remember, he got a little paranoid about, rightfully so, maybe, of people that were after him.
Oh, he was more
Not
than
in a weird paranoia. It was
Yeah.
one of, this is happening. I think he even blamed his wife's death on that. But then it wasn't long after that he died. And
for some reason, I recall it differently. But you know about Jeff Rentz, Michael? You ever listen to his stuff?
Jeff Rentz.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But Art Bell, his son was kidnapped.
Yes.
I remember his son was kidnapped, sexually assaulted, or SA or whatever you want to call it. Don't want to get demonetized.
Art Bell died.
Ramona died. Her lungs exploded.
Art Bell died April 13th of 2018.
Yeah, I thought he was up recently. So yeah, it's been about 5 years. he was doing shows up, through the end.
And
but
this says that the coroner's office stated.
Yeah.
Now line this up with all the conspiracies that Art Bell talked about throughout his career. The coroner's office stated that Art Bell died of an accidental overdose from a cocktail of prescription drugs. The coroner's office determined he had 4 prescription medications in his system: the opioids, oxycodone or Roxicet, is that how you say that? And hydrocodone or Vicodin, diazepam or Valium, and Carisprotol or Soma, a muscle relaxant.
That's just a cocktail of crappy consciousness. I mean, you're going out with
much.
that stuff in there. But what was your point, Michael, about bringing up Bell?
No, we was talking about, kind of the quickening or whatever, like a time or whatever, if you could extend your time you have here, whether it be, like in a virtual reality or in a perceived reality, that's kind of been what humans have been fighting for a long time. And I said, the older we get, the quicker, it seems to pass. And that's where Art Bell comes in. Cause I remember his thing, the quickening, and that was kind of his saying, the older you get. And he swears that time was speeding up. But I remember, I know Ramona died. Then he went to somewhere in Asia. Then he came back because he had married another woman out of the Philippines and come back. But the whole Art Bell saga was just wild.
Yeah, there was some crazy stuff there. Sir, what do you think about? Would you want to plug in?
Probably. I mean, it's a matter of a quality of life issue, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna live our best life, or however you want to call it, or be a bit hedonistic.
Quantity over quality.
About it.
Yeah.
I mean, but what you were saying earlier, about life expectancy, we're moving towards and living in an age where life expectancy is a lot longer than what it used to be. Back in the day, you were lucky to make it to your 40s. Now people are making it to their 80s or 90s or even more than that.
100.
So, and then we also have to as a culture and things that we reside on this planet, because we eat up, like your kids, we eat up resources. So we're living longer, we're eating up resources, and then we have to accommodate for that.
And that is crazy. I was watching some show yesterday on just in passing while I was doing other things, a show on archaeology on a bunch of skeletons, how they were reconstructing the skeleton of an old woman from some little medieval town, and dating back into the 1100s or the 10s or something like that. And but they were talking about how in this town, from the look of all the skeletal remains they found and all this, the average lifespan was about 30. And they said it had to do with not just harsher elements out there, not being able to take care of themselves, as well as well-moneyed people. The foods they ate, the meager amounts of food they ate, the nutrition, all of this stuff. And I look at that now, and I'm like twice the age anybody in that town ever lived to be during that period of time.
Oh, you'd be ancient.
I'd be
You'd be
super
ancient.
So,
But
yeah,
you think
it's interesting.
you think about it: parasites, ringworm. What's the one you get in your stomach? Not ringworm. The one where it gets in and sucks all the nutrients out of your body. You know, just the parasites
Parasites.
could have just
Tapeworm.
Tapeworm.
Tapeworms,
tapeworm. Yeah. Yeah, you get one tapeworm, it don't matter. You know, if you ain't got no
Might be pleasant.
nutrition going in anyway, it's going to take it right
Yeah.
out. You know, it's like
And on that pleasant note, we're going to call it quits tonight. We're after 11 o'clock. I was dragging coming in. I'm dragging going out.
Well, I didn't get to. I'll make it quick. I didn't get to voice my plug or not to plug.
Plug what?
In.
What did you want to plug?
No, the plug in you were talking about.
Oh.
So I'll make it
Yeah.
quick.
Make it quick.
2023. You better be clarifying that.
So there's two things. One, the whole idea of immortality is why you would even consider this, right? Or some
Sure.
extended
Yeah.
life experience.
Plug in my
so-
corpse.
Yeah. So, and you'd have to be plugged in order for that to happen. Well, the way I see things, I'm already immortal and I'm already plugged in.
There
So
you go.
the iteration of this particular physical experience is just one of many along the path. And
Yeah.
if my ability to not employ this biology and make it and use it as it's designed because of some incapacitation, I would just rather say, well, I'm connected. Let's just go ahead to the next. Why prolong this when this is clearly, been affected? It's been mitigated. It's just not working no more. And if the plug-in is some kind of illusory or induced falseness, it's like, well, I don't want to spend my time there. I want to stay in the reality
Right.
and stay in the connection that I already have of already being immortal, because that's what going back to what Mike was saying about conservation of energy and matter. It never changed. Energy and matter just transform. They never go away. That's why entropy doesn't work.
Right.
All those the other things that I mentioned. So if you're a frequency stamp that is a result of the energy from consciousness, then you always exist.
Yeah.
You just iterate. So you are connected. You are immortal. Why mess around with the artificial stuff when the real stuff is even more bizarre?
And listen, you can exist forever wherever you want. You just can't do it here because we're out of here. We
Yeah.
got to get out of here. So it's like the old saying we had at the festival. When we were sending everybody home, they announced from the gates, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay
But you
here.
can't stay here.
So, all right. So we're out of here.
All right.
Everybody. Michael,
All right.
good to have you. Have a good night, brother.
Yes, sir.
Get better. You too, Professor. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming in, letting me come in
You're
and
welcome.
crash it. And if I don't talk to everybody, just enjoy the holidays. Doing whatever it is you enjoy doing, and doing it with as much fun and just being relaxed as possible. Don't let it
Right.
get your fur ruffled. Just brush it down and sit there and be cool.
There it is. And we'll be back here on Friday. So everybody can join us unless some weird freak of nature happens and I don't show up. So, Professor, we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Sarah, thanks for coming in.
All right. Thanks, Scotty.
We'll see you later. You have a good day tomorrow. Hope you have a better day tomorrow.
Well,
And,
I'm
I don't
hanging
know,
in there
it's
till the end of the year. So
What's that?
I'm saying hanging in there until the end of the year.
The end of the year. You got some good changes coming up?
Well, no, we got to do it all over again.
Oh,
So-
gotcha. Then you got another whole year ahead of you.
Yeah. Yeah. This
All
year
right.
just flew by. It just seems
Didn't
like,
it, though?
yeah.
It's already 2024.
Yeah.
Just turned 2023. Thank goodness it's 2024.
Yeah. Let's
So,
hope it goes in a better progression than
I
past
hope so.
3-4 years.
Ain't that the truth?
Because we
All
said
right.
2022, said now 2023 is going to be better, and then it wasn't, and then we'll see.
I kind of knew 2023 wasn't going to get better. It'll get better now only because, politically speaking, government, because there's a challenge to what exists. And so they got to keep trying to prove themselves now. And we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully there's not too many people not thinking enough to put somebody better in place.
Well,
That's going to
Professor
work.
Bauer was said everything's going to implode on itself. So,
Ain't that the truth? All right, Sarah.
all right, thanks,
Have a
guys.
good night. Everybody else, thank you for being here. Thanks for coming on board. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being part of my show. And we'll be back here on Friday and Thursday. It's my only day in 5 days that I don't do radio. So, because I do Sunday, Monday, Tuesday with Robertson, Wednesday, then Thursday's off, then Friday, Saturday's off, then Sunday again. So Thursday and Saturday are my days off where I don't have to do anything in the evening. It's kind of nice every now and then. So we won't see you tomorrow, but we'll see you day after tomorrow. I have court tomorrow. For those of you who followed my saga, I have court tomorrow. Finally going to wipe this thing out, I hope. So going to meet with my attorney at 9 a.m. and at 9:30 we've got court to take care of this stupid, ridiculous thing. And I'll report back and let you know. Hey, John, make it snow. Picard. Yeah. Now I'm good without the snow for now. All right, guys. We'll see you later. You have a good night. We'll catch you next time. And in the meantime, live long and prosper.